this meeting to order at 6:32. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The only agenda amendment I have is we're actually just eliminating under old business hiring update. There isn't any. And nothing to add, correct?
Nothing I have.
I don't have anything to add. Anybody else? Hearing none. On to correspondence or public comments. Mr. Denault.
Mr. Chairman, are the members of the VSBA here? Representatives of the VSBA are here tonight.
Yes.
I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jay Jamal. The reason why I'm here is because I want to clear the record. April 10th, your meeting, there was some comments made about you wanting to take exception to where that was made by one of your members. That I have a problem with the truth sometimes. So I'm here to clarify that. In my hand, I have a document, and I'll give you everybody a copy. It's the Education Legislative Report dated April 10th, 2012. I'm going to read it shortly. I'm not going to take long. This is on the subject of School Governance Bill H753, which became Act 156, the predecessor of what we're now dealing with, Act 46. And at the time, the Senate inserted the entirety of S194. It would direct the Secretary of Administration in consultation with the Commissioner of Education's report in January 2013, 2 years before the implementation of Act 46. Plan to restructure SUs so that there be no more than 3 for each Vermont 16 technical center service regions for a maximum of 48 supervisor unions as compared to the current 60. This is the position that was taken by the Vermont School Board Association, and there are 2 cohorts, the Vermont Superintendent Association and Vermont Principal Association, and I quote, "Our association strongly support H753, otherwise known as Act 156. With one exception, we oppose the inclusion of the Senate language from S194 regarding a plan of reconfiguration of supervisor union boundaries. Implementing school and supervisor union mergers that enjoy community support is difficult and complex work. Now listen to these words. We believe it sends contradictory and discouraging messages to local school officials for the state to support H753, 156, and the voluntary merger process on the one hand, while also directing state officials to direct a new structure that supervising unions could be imposed on school districts by the legislature or the state board. Well, they must have made an exception in our case because that's precisely what happened to us in this district. They stripped Sheldon from our supervisor union for the sole purpose of forcing us into a merged preferred governance structure at the overwhelming resistance of our electorate. The VSBA is functions from money received from taxpayers. And I find it disgusting that the VSBA uses that money to support an effort to save 12 superintendents' positions from the ravages of a merger, while they turn their back on us that are paying for their very existence. To me, that is absolutely reprehensible. This is hypocritical, and is the reason why that led to Westminster, Athens, Grafton, Rockingham voting to withdraw their membership, with countless Middlesex, Berlin, East Montpelier, Worcester, and Woodstock, Pressbury, Hardwick, Greensboro, Standard, and Woodbury about to vote on doing the same thing at their next meetings. I vehemently am opposed to this board continuing to pay $12,000 to the VSBA if they're going to treat us like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Any other public comments?
Oh, one more thing, I'm sorry. What ties this all together that I forget, I don't want to forget this part that's important. Who do you suppose the president of the Vermont Superintendent Association was during the time that this document was produced? Anybody got a care to guess? It happened to be Dan French, the president of the Superintendent Association while he was superintendent of Bennington and Rutland School District.
Any other public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to approval of meeting minutes from August 20th and August 27th. We'll, I guess we can lump them together. I'll take a motion to approve both.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Discussion.
I wasn't at the 20th meeting, so I would abstain from voting on that one, but I was at the 27th. Should they be combined, or should I just abstain for both?
That's a good question.
I wasn't at the 27th either.
Maybe you want to put them up
Yeah,
for that reason.
we'll separate them then. So I will entertain a motion to adopt August 20th meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
There we go. Okay, discussion on August 20th.
Yeah, just the minutes have us going right to executive session. Whoops, sorry, I'm on the wrong meeting. Never mind. Save it.
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of accepting August 20th meeting minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Yes.
Motion carries 801. I'll entertain a motion to adopt August 27th meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Discussion.
All right, that's the one. So the minutes had us going directly into executive session, but there was a brief discussion of what we would use to guide, what we had available to guide us in those decisions. Article 3, in absence of policy. So.
I gave away my notes on that meeting too, so I don't remember the day at
We
times.
do have that. I didn't
Okay.
reflect that in my, but we can make that change easily.
I think that's
And I
important
do
to have
have
in the
my-
public record.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
I don't have those minutes in front of me, but when I read them the first time, maybe it's changed. I thought Eric's name was listed twice in attending. That wasn't already corrected, I don't know.
Yep. It's the. Oh, it wasn't correct. You're right, it's twice. Yep.
I knew he was
He was
there.
very present.
He was there twice.
Didn't vote twice though, did you? 3 times.
Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of adopting August 27th minutes as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Yes.
801 again. Let's see, we're on to presentations, which our first presentation is from the Vermont School Board Association.
So we have Susan Olsen and Sue Siglowski from the Vermont School Board Association. We invited them to address the board because of some of the concerns around paying the dues and wanted to have a discussion, have a presentation from you about not everybody is aware of all of the things that the Vermont School Board Association does in addition to its advocacy.
Kira and I are gonna move to the.
I was just gonna ask where you would like us. Would you
Right
like
here.
us to come around the table so we can be facing you all?
I think this is a
You can
pretty good
come and sit
vantage
right
point
there.
right here,
Okay.
so otherwise you might be on TV, just the backside of your thing.
And now my best side. Thank you. Thanks, Dawn. So I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Pierrette. I'm Susan Olsen. I'm the Director of Education Services with the Vermont School Boards Association. What that means is I am responsible for half of our mission, that half being school board development, board training, and the like. I've been with VSBA about 2 years. Prior to that, I've had a long and storied past, but most of it has centered around children and education. Although I am not a trained educator, I owned and operated Kids Vermont newspaper for a decade. I have taught numerous classes at our local area colleges, and I served on school boards. 6 years total, including 3 on an elementary school board. This was pre-Act 46. And 3 on a high school board, including a stint on the supervisory union board. So I just want to sort of turn and talk about some of the programs that we have at VSBA for our members. And these are all benefits that go along with your dues. We have our free monthly webinar series, our Thursday webinars, first Thursdays, which we are now, as of this week, switching to lunch break. So they'll be happening during the day rather than evenings because we had conflicts with some board meetings. You can't find a night that doesn't have a school board. I challenge you. We also do a comprehensive training for new board members, which takes a lot of different forms, including a day-long training. We do special intensives at our annual conference, as well as other workshops throughout the year. We publish the handbook, the Essential Work of Vermont School Boards workbook. I don't have one with me. I have a case of them in my car, but we carpooled today, which is a very comprehensive resource for all school board members about governance and your role as school board members, and provides a lot of worksheets and samples and what ifs. And we just updated that this spring, so brand new, hot off the presses. We do joint training opportunities for school board officers and superintendents as required by statute, but we take that on. We do our annual annual conference in conjunction with the Superintendents Association, and that it features germane topics on education as pertains to Vermont school districts, but with a bigger view. So we bring in national resources as well as local experts and host a series of workshops on relevant topics. And we also have a pretty comprehensive website that we're constantly updating. It has on it the proprietary platform that is the foundation of that workbook that I mentioned. It's called the Essential Work for School Boards Toolkit, and we in fact have a series of toolkits. We have one for new board members, we have one for school board chairs, we have the Essential Work, we have one for if you're thinking about running for a school board. So there are a variety of those, and they get refreshed. All of our resources get refreshed on a regular basis. Tag, you're it.
Thank you. I'm Sue Siglowski, and I'm the Director of Legal and Policy Services for the Vermont School Boards Association. And my job involves working with school boards on superintendent evaluations. That's a big part of what I do. I also maintain the model policy manual. If you've been to our website, I'm sure you've seen our model policy manual, and right now I'm in the middle of updating the model policy manual. Every time there's a change in the law that affects the policy needs to be updated, and then also every 3 years we go through all of our policies and update them with input from VSBIT attorneys, so they're looking at the risk management side of our policies. So I work on that policy manual, and I also work directly with boards on their policy reviews and policy updates. I can look at all of a board's policies and let them know which ones need to be updated and suggest changes to them. The other part of my job is that I work in the State House during the legislative session, following all of the education-related bills and reporting on those to our members. And I've been in this position for about 18 months. Prior to that, I've been practicing law in the state of Vermont. I am an attorney for the past 20 years in private practice, and also working for the state of Vermont. I can let you know a little bit more about some of the other services that come with the VSBA membership that Susan hasn't covered already. One of them I've already mentioned, which is the Model Policy Manual. I think that's one of the best resources that we have for school boards, because if you look in the in this green book, which is the education law book, something that we publish, you'll see that the very first responsibility of a school board is to adopt policies, and that's a very important role that you have. The other big part of my job is that I answer questions from school board members from around the state on a daily basis. They're either calling me or emailing me with questions about open meeting law, or they have a board vacancy and they're not quite sure what the legal process is to fill that vacancy. I get questions about Robert's rules. I get all different kinds of questions, and a lot of them I can answer. If it's a question dealing with a specific student issue, I need to refer the board to their own legal counsel for questions like that. There's some other questions that I get that are more geared toward the Secretary of State, but I have a couple contacts at the Secretary of State's office, so I can refer board members to a specific person there to answer their question. Another thing that we do for members is publish this book, which is extremely helpful. It's done every year and it's updated with all of the education laws, and I highly encourage you to get a copy if you have a lot of questions that can be answered by looking at the statutes, and most of them can. We also have regular communications out to boards on different topics that arise throughout the year, and those come to you in a variety of different ways. One of them is our newsletter that goes out 3 to 4 times a year. Our legislative report, and then oftentimes if there is an update that all of you need to know about, there'll be an email that will go out regarding collective bargaining or a variety of different topics. The other thing that we do at the VSBA is representation on a variety of statewide task forces and advisory councils. The legislature, oftentimes when they adopt a law, will have a provision in there that says that there's going to be a study, and there's going to be a committee that does a study. And if it is an education-related topic, oftentimes the VSBA will have the legislature will put the VSBA representative on that. So some of the things that we're serving on right now are the Act 173 Special Education Funding Advisory Group, the Hazing, Harassment, and Bullying Council, Building Bright Futures Advisory Council, which has to do with pre-K, Vermont NEA's Racial Justice Task Force, the Vermont School Crisis Planning Team, the Student Staff Ratio Study Committee, and the Ethnic and Social Equity Standards Working Group. One of the things that we wanted to let you know about is that SUs and SDs that are not paying members are not able to submit resolutions to the VSBA or vote at our annual meeting, and also would be ineligible to vote in regional elections for representation on the VSBA board. And those that are not dues-paying members would not be able to serve on the VSBA board. There's also, within the past 6 months, I would say, the board has adopted a new rate sheet that has different rates for members and non-members for services. So we would still provide services to school boards that aren't members, but the rates that we charge would be higher.
Some of the services.
Yes.
Some that are built into the dues would not be available to non-members.
Right.
And maybe we started in the middle. Maybe we need to take a step back and just say the VSBA is a member-owned organization. So we rely on dues-paying members to staff the association. We have a staff of 4 that does all this work. And our mission is to represent the voice of school boards in the state. which gets complicated because we have a lot of school boards and we have a lot of communities, and not everybody agrees about anything, much less everything. So when it comes time to be that voice, there are going to be some who disagree with certain things. And that's just the nature of the beast, like sitting on any other board, like sitting on this board. I'm sure your votes aren't all unanimous on everything. It's not the way the world works. So we do our best, and we have a process in place that assures that we are hearing from our members and their regional representation on our board to make sure that we are doing that effectively and ethically. Do you want to talk about that process?
The resolutions process?
Resolutions and bylaws and the board representation and all of that?
Yes, yes. So we're actually in the middle right now of the resolutions process. Boards had until July 15th to submit resolutions. Any board that is part of a member of a SU or an SD can submit resolutions. And the resolutions are really what guides VSBA's policy direction. So it is board's opportunity to have a voice in that. And the resolutions are submitted this year. I believe we received 11 timely resolutions. Last year, I think we had almost 20, so we had a lot last year. And they are reviewed by a resolutions committee, which by the VSBA bylaws has to have one member from each region. VSBA has 11 regions, and you have two representatives from each region on the VSBA board. So,
including Dawn.
Yes, including Dawn. So the resolutions committee needs to have somebody from each region on it, and they look at all those resolutions. They make a recommendation to the full board to pass, do not pass, or take no position. Then it goes to the full VSBA board, who looks at all the resolutions, and they decide whether their recommendation pass, do not pass, or take no position. But no matter what position the VSBA board takes, every single resolution goes to the annual meeting for a vote by the membership. And if a resolution gets a 60% vote of the membership at the annual meeting, then it becomes a resolution of the VSBA. You can find all of our resolutions on our website, and those are what guides the policy direction of the VSBA. So there's different sections of the resolutions having to do with different topics. One of them is governance, one of them is more business related. I believe there's 5 or 6 different sections on the resolutions. So that's how the policy agenda of the organization is formed. It's formed from the ground up from our members. And if there's a topic that the resolutions don't cover, then the VSBA board, which is, as I said, representatives from around the state, from 11 different regions, 2 from each region, plus a past president and the president, so there's 24 people on the board, then they need to have a discussion, and it's usually a very robust discussion with different points of view given, and then at the end of that discussion, they vote on the topic.
Sue, will you talk a little bit about the meeting coming up in Edithsburg next month?
Sure. So part of this regional structure that we have 2 representatives elected locally by school board members of VSBA member districts to represent you regionally on the VSBA board. There are 2 from each region because they're staggered 2-year terms. So every year somebody is elected or re-elected. And that election takes place at our regional meetings. So the staff travels to all 11 of our regions between next week and the middle of October, where we encourage all members to attend. There's a business meeting that includes the election. In this year, there'll be a discussion of some proposed bylaws changes, including the structural the way we structure our 11 regions, as well as content. This year, there's going to be an update on the Act 11 Bargaining Commission, as well as an activity from the Agency of Education on the newly launched annual snapshot of data that's submitted from every district. So they're content rich, but the feedback that we get is the most important thing is you have an opportunity to meet and talk to other school board members in your area. And so, Dawn, refresh my memory, the Enosburg meeting, the date up here is?
In October, is it?
Yeah, you're one of the last ones. I don't have the date off the top of my
I
head.
think it's the second Tuesday of October. It doesn't conflict with our board meeting.
Okay, well, that's
We
good.
can get, Julie can get that out to you.
Right. And you will certainly get it from us as well, including the newsletter that's going out this week. We'll have all of those times and places listed. Are there any questions? Anything that anybody wants to know about VSBA? We are yours.
I actually have
October
a couple of
7th.
questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for driving up here, because I know it's far. And I've been on a board for the past 2 years or 3 years, I think, up in this area. And I think VSBA has really been helpful in terms of educating. We've used some of the videos, remember, and understanding the taxes and how that all worked. And also, I went to some of your webinars. You know, they were very helpful. And I also went to the meet, or what does a board member do down in Colchester. So education, but I haven't really seen much else that comes out of VSBA. And I'm hearing you talk about the legalities that we could call you for legal advice, and yet we've never called you all that I know of. Maybe Julie has, but as a board, it hasn't been my experience that we've ever called. We've always paid our own attorneys for everything.
So there's a distinction that Sue was making between the specific legal needs that you have on a particular personnel matter, for example, and interpretation of education law per statute. And that's, so we don't represent a district.
Well, what about during the Act 46 when we were kind of floundering over what we were going to do? Was that was law, legal, I mean, that was law, but I don't recall. I think it was the Department of Education that was kind of telling us stuff. I don't remember.
Well, we also had an Act 46, you're predating either of us, so I may have I may have the terms wrong, but we did have an Act 46 support effort that was staffed and specifically designed to be helping boards navigate Act 46, whatever that meant to you in your geography. And most of our communication to our members is we update our database regularly. We rely heavily on central office staff to help us in that because we can't monitor every election. And then we go out to most members by email. So if you're not receiving regular weekly legislative updates from us during legislative session or other regular communications from us, please let us know, because maybe we don't have the right email address for you. We also have encountered in some school districts, and I think this is getting better, but if you use a school district email address, in some cases our VSBA address is either gray listed or blacklisted because of privacy concerns of student email. And so that sometimes becomes a barrier also for communication.
I'm wondering how much is on us as school board members to have known about these things that are available. For example, evaluation or feedback for superintendents.
So we mailed this out in the spring, and this lists all of the
So that's
different
what we should pay
services.
attention
I mean,
to.
we put them in our newsletters, we put them out in separate emails if we are developing a new service. And we also hope that your central office will make you aware of.
Oh, they do. That's
Okay.
how we find out about it
Excellent.
when we do find anything
Excellent.
out.
Happy to hear that.
But I'm just thinking you all could do a better job.
Does this look familiar to you? Well, you know, we're dealing with about 1,000 school board members statewide who have varying levels of interest in improving their governance and staying informed about legislative issues. And so it's a fine balance between bombarding you with information and being respectful and not overdoing it. And sometimes I feel in my role in the training particularly, and given the fact that I have an extensive background in marketing, I feel like sometimes we really are overdoing it. And so I tend to pull back a little bit, but we do send out 2 emails about every webinar that's coming up.
I think that's your strongest point, actually, from
Well,
my experience.
Well, I'm glad you have found them helpful, and they're all archived and available to everybody at any time through our website. And we're actually just starting to diversify into podcasting, and we'll see how that goes. That's a new initiative. So thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, and if you have ideas of other ways that we can reach school board members, we're happy to hear them, for sure.
I think that's a constant issue with really marketing in general. Like, I can lead the horse to the water, but I can't make it drink. So
Call me a
they
voice,
can,
Megan.
or myself, putting out the information, and there is personal responsibility in this. It's our jobs to be informed and to seek out the information. And so I feel like, yeah, perhaps there's something more that could be done on VSBA's side, but at the same time, I guarantee more could be done on board members' side for actually taking advantage of the resources that you have.
We
So-
also, I come and visit school board members on a regular, school board meetings on a regular basis by invitation. So if there's a particular topic that you want to dive into a little bit more in depth, or I facilitate retreats when boards do usually it's summer or fall retreats, so we're available to you. We are, like I said, we are yours. We're a phone call away or an email away. We're pretty easy to find. We can't jump into your living room. We're trying, but we also don't want to invade anybody.
Is it acceptable for individual board members to reach out, or should it always go through a chair or vice chair or the superintendent?
It depends on the question. I mean, if it's about board business, your best protocol generally is to channel through your board chair, because there may be local resources right here that you just may not be privy to. But I certainly have taken calls, and I know you have taken calls from board members who have questions about the way their board meetings are being run, for example, and where they don't necessarily want to address it with the chair, and they just want to sort of get some grounding about, well, what does this look like in other districts?
Okay. Thank you.
Jay?
Well, I'm glad you 2 ladies are here, because a review of the March 3rd VSBA meeting, it showed a very emotional Nicole Mace reacting to the plaque that she received because of the VSBA's failure to support schools like the one that we're sitting in with regards to H39, the delay bill. She was visibly upset and near tears until the board voted to direct her to testify, along with Mr. Neal, I guess it is, O'Neill, in which they did. So, is that the same process that you follow that resulted in the VSBA filing an unfair labor practice against the NEA over healthcare benefits negotiations? Because the documents show that you filed the unfair labor practice against the NEA. And by the way, the issue that was at foot was the NEA wanted to name 10 more alternates because school was starting, and they weren't sure that the ones that were going to be negotiating their healthcare benefits were going to be able to make the meeting. And that resulted in unfair labor practice being filed by the VSBA. I'd like to know who authorized that.
Would you like us to respond to the audience?
If you would like to, sure.
The commission that's bargaining is not the VSBA. The VSBA was in the statute tasked with appointing people to the commission. However, the VSBA is not directing the actions of those commissioners. They are an independent commission.
But the VSBA filed a complaint. You can manipulate the discussion all you want, but the VSBA filed the unfair labor complaint. Their name appears on the docket.
Their name does appear on the docket because they are the, I guess you would call it the managing entity for that group, because they have no, that group has no staff. But
So you
that's
agree-
not a VSBA decision to file that
So
complaint.
whose decision was it?
Jay, this isn't the place to have this debate.
I haven't got an answer.
Mr. Chairman, Susan, it was my understanding that when the legislature wanted to address this healthcare issue, they designated the Vermont NEA and VSBA to not do the work,
Right.
but to take and create a membership. So when you're saying it's not VSBA, you are right. And the way my understanding as a board member was, we were there because the legislature said in the law, VSBA, you need to work to set up this commission or whatever you want to call it. So you are right, it's an independent group, and probably could have been formed without somebody being designated, but it did make sense in Vermont teacher bargaining law that there is the association and there are school boards. So I think the legislature was just following that.
Correct, yes.
So VSBA filed the unfair labor
Jay,
practice
Jay,
without the permission of the
Jay,
board.
enough.
This is stupid, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. To continue associating yourself with this is ridiculous.
We haven't made a decision, but we're not here for you to badger other
I'm waiting
people.
for your decision, that's for sure.
Okay. Any other questions and comments?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think the reason we've invited members of the VSBA here ultimately stemmed from the Act 46 process, and we are evaluating whether or not to continue membership. So we wanted to make that decision fully informed, and so I appreciate hearing from the two of you about all the benefits, and I know that we have leaned on the VSBA offerings, the webinars and the documentation, the model policies quite a bit. And those are beneficial to us. There's one difficult question that keeps coming back to me that I think it's worthwhile to ask, and I think the VSBA deserves the opportunity to answer, and it stems from Neil Odell's testimony before the Senate Education Committee on March 14th, where he advocated for mergers and against a delay. And so I guess the difficult question then is, why would anyone continue to pay dues and be a member of an organization that would openly advocate for the dissolution of its own members? So I'll put that out there. I don't know if the two of you have the answer, but that's where I keep
Thank you
getting
for
hung
that
up.
question, Tom.
I wish that that a couple of board members could be here. Don's here, so he can certainly speak to the topic. But I know that we have board members who could speak to your question, and I think what they would say is that they have encountered topics where they disagreed with what the VSBA did, and maybe, and I know one of them, I've heard him speak and say, you know, that his board actually had the same discussion that you're having tonight. And they ultimately decided that they were not going to let one issue affect their membership when they looked at the benefits that they were getting from the membership and the process that the VSBA goes through in order to reach decisions. They felt that it was worthwhile to continue their membership in the organization and to be able to take advantage of the benefits and also have input on future decisions that the organization is making.
Chris, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to speak, and maybe Susan would prefer I not speak, but I'm willing to speak to that issue since it is one that we've discussed a few times.
I would like to hear it, yes.
Okay. So anyway, VSBA Executive Committee, or whatever you call, we're not the Executive Committee, we're what? How many members did you say we were?
24.
24.
And
Yep.
there they have an Executive Committee, okay? If you remember back to our special meeting a few days ago, Not everybody was unanimous in any decision, well, maybe some, but not on things. The board works real hard on trying to make sure they hear the voices of everyone. In this situation, and I think timing was important to the legislature, and I can say I know that as a former chair, but Neil Odell, I believe, out of the Windsor district, is the vice chair, and he and I believe Nicole Mace, and correct me if I'm wrong, were asked to appear before Senate Education. And I'm not sure how we got to those final statements, but we do have an executive committee, and it's my understanding that with the short notice through the executive committee, our executive director, Nicole, who's not here tonight, they went to testify, and I guess their testimony, of what I was told was based on the feedback from the majority of school boards. Now, sometimes as a school board member, I'm somewhat lackadaisical on letting VSBA know something is a controversial burning issue with me. And so I think in this case, what you had was their message, whether it was one that I liked or anybody liked, was the one that they were getting from the majority of members. Sue, go ahead.
Actually, at that March meeting, my recollection is because of the sensitivity of the issue and the timing necessity, and knowledge that this was a divisive issue among many communities and many school boards. That entire board meeting consisted of canvassing each of the 24 board members who were present, and I can't tell you offhand how many that was, but you can watch the video, it's on our website, and each one spoke at length, however much time they needed or wanted, to share their position. And at the end of that process, the board voted and took the position that was reflected in the testimony that Dawn is talking about.
And it was not a unanimous vote.
It was not a unanimous vote, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, that some issues are not going to be unanimous. And I think that the question before you, if you have a question, is to weigh the benefits of the membership versus a disagreement on this particular sole issue. Granted, it's a big one, I get that. But that's really the balance that you have to assess.
I think that's been in the back of my mind the whole time. I think there were some questions raised initially about what we get for the cost. But the bigger issue was people were angry, whether rightfully or wrongfully they are. And to me, it seems, I don't want to say, silly is the word that's coming to mind, but I know that's not the best word to describe it, but it just seems not the best route to sever ties with an organization that I know personally I've benefited from. I attended the new school board training. I read the legislative updates. So for me, the benefit outweighs, and I would stress that to no longer be members because of one issue. I mean, if we cut off relationships in any aspect of our life because of a disagreement on something that we deem, super important, I don't know. I don't think that's the best route, and I hope everyone can keep that in mind.
$2 million. Increase in net ed spending.
Jake.
It's not a little one.
Okay.
I got a question on the legal counsel aspect of things. So the VSBA provided legal counsel for school boards navigating through Act 46, correct?
I don't believe it was legal counsel.
No.
No. I think it was consultants that worked with boards through
Yes.
the VSBA. Yeah. That was before I was with the VSBA.
So why did we not seek out the VSBA and we hired Pedro Lynn?
The Vermont School Board Association will give legal counsel around process. They gave a lot of input and they had consultants that worked with voluntary merger as part of that process. And they facilitated some of that, people drafting their articles of agreement and so forth. So several years ago, more at the beginning of this process. In terms of individual legal counsel, the majority of the time, you're looking at, especially when we had a lot of situations where the agency was saying something and we maybe had, we were navigating that. The VSBA might weigh in, but it would all come down to a decision you have to make. And if it's specific, typically everyone defaults to contact your own legal counsel. My familiarity, excuse me, with the VSBA providing legal support is when you have an issue as a board. So whether there's a crisis with a superintendent or a problem that you're trying to deal with as a board, sometimes they will give support around that.
That's great.
Or another example is recently I provided open meeting law training to a
Right.
board because they had violated the open meeting law and they needed to have training in order to address that.
It was a number of years ago, but also I remember that when schools I had to dealt with substance abuse, the SBA was out there giving schools information on the do's and don'ts so you don't get yourself in a legal mess. And then when they start getting into specific things like bringing the police and the dogs, then they said consult with your local attorney,
Right.
whoever your attorney is. But
Big
at the beginning,
picture.
they provided some parameters so that people, through their exuberance to do something good, didn't violate somebody's rights. So that was quite a few years ago, but I know that was one of the things that was very helpful.
Any more questions or comments?
If we do have, I would suggest everybody here go to Enosburg. There'll be an open discussion there on a number of issues. There'll be speakers and good. So, if tonight kind of what is your appetite on what kind of dialogue we can have with the SBA, be in Enosburg.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing you there.
Don, is that a school board meeting in Enosburg? Or is that a
That's a
VSBA?
VSBA member meeting.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. We
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
us.
Thank you.
You may have your seat back.
So at this
Walk them
time,
out so they don't get lost.
sure. At this time, we're going to move on to the MVU Administrator's Report.
Sure. So, I'll just walk through. I don't know if she's got a tablet board or not, so it's okay. I'll just read through. So a few of the things that we updated the board on in our report this month. We had our high school open house earlier this year on August 21st in the evening. We provided a meal for students, family, and staff, and an opportunity for students to come in and get their schedules and meet faculty and staff. Middle school open house is going to be on Tuesday, September 10th. Some of the professional development that we provided during in-service, the school district welcomed Eric Waddell as our keynote speaker for in-service, and then he continued to work with us throughout the throughout the day. And he held 2 sessions focused on how to incorporate social and emotional learning into the classroom. And it was very well received from our faculty and staff. Also, during in-service, we spent a great deal of time planning activities on how to build relationships, positive relationships with students at the start of the school year. And we're also offering a new flexible intervention block this year, so we spent a great deal of time planning what our offerings were going to be during that time. Homecoming is coming up the week of September 16th. There will be under the lights games throughout the week. There will be a fireworks display on Friday evening, and there's a high school dance as well. Later this evening, you'll have a tour of our renovations. They were wrapped up mostly on Monday, August 26th. There's the tunnel that connects J-Pod to the main building, and a lot of the equipment has been removed from campus. And we've got our new sign up on the front entrance, which looks great, and we'll hear more about that shortly. I also included, because I heard there were questions at the last meeting, a science and mathematics update. So we're in our second year of offering more flexible offerings and accelerated offerings in science. So I have enrollment numbers in the report for our science, our upper level science courses. There was an omission when I sent out the report originally, and so I included our AP biology classes up to 18 this year. We're offering a new research methods class, which is a semester-based class where students will perform scientific research, upperclassmen. And we're also offering a flexible option for students in Resource Management 2 and Animal Science 2 to receive their integrated science credit through that offering, which is exciting. Also, our mathematics offerings, our upper level mathematics offerings are up. I had the pleasure of having to order new AP stats textbooks this year because we didn't have enough. We had our AP stats enrollment is over 20, we're at 21, and we have 23 students in AP calculus this year, which is tremendous. We haven't had enrollment like that in a long time. So we're very excited about that. We're also offering for a second year in a row an SAT prep math class that we're offering each semester, and we have good enrollment in that as well. So we're very optimistic about the enrollment in our upper level science and math courses. I already mentioned that middle school open house is coming on September 10th, homecoming events the week of September 16th, and there'll be Under the Lights games throughout that week. And the very popular Powder Puff game, write this one down, September 28th at 7 o'clock at Collins Pearly. And anything else you want to add, Mr. Hartman?
Covered it, thanks,
I
Jen.
covered it. Okay. Are there any questions?
I have one question. All of the advanced classes that you're offering is great. I mean, I'm knocking that, but every time I come to an open house or any presentation at the school, you never mention anything about trades. I mean, not every kid wants to go to college. Not every kid wants to do advanced classes.
Yep.
There's kids that want to do the trades. And as a tradesperson, there's a serious shortage of young people that want to do it.
We know that, and actually last week we met with the Ag Advisory Board in the evening, and I provided a summary for them of the enrollments in our Ag program, which is up as well. And so some of the pieces that I spoke about in the science summary, this year we offered Resource Management 2, which is typically taken by our 11th grade students. That increased to a 3-credit offering with an integrated science credit, and we have, I believe, 15 or 16 students enrolled in that program. It's the highest it's been in years. We have 25 students in Animal Science 1, which is very high as well. We had to have 2 sections of that. So we're seeing increased enrollments in our Animal Science program, our Resource Management program, and also in our Mechanics program. And we have about 15 students also doing work-based learning as well in their afternoon session.
Very good.
So we are trying very hard to build up that portion as well.
So I'm sorry, I may have missed the last program you mentioned, but they all seem very agricultural, animal focused. Are
Yeah.
there other options, other trade options?
So because MVU is a comprehensive high school and not a technical center, we cannot offer programs that compete with Northwest Technical Center. So we send a number of students to Northwest Technical Center for their programs, but the programs that we offer here have to be agriculturally based so that we don't compete with what they offer.
Okay. And do students, is that a full program, like they're at?
It's a half-day program.
Okay.
This is probably a dumb question, but what does CP stand for?
College prep.
Okay. As opposed to AP?
Mm-hmm.
Advanced placement?
Advanced
How's
placement,
that
yes.
different? Is it different?
Yes.
Yeah.
One you can get college credit for and the other you can't? Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see, we're on to new business. First up is the MVU project update. Paul?
How's it going? So I'm happy to say we had a very successful construction project this summer. No, I'm good. It was done on time, very busy summer, especially the last 2 weeks. As Jen mentioned, the 26th was our drop date dead to be out of here. So right now the project is about 99% complete. We have a couple additional things to do into the boiler room where all the glycol didn't come in at once. So We have a little bit of stuff to do out there, but all in all, it was a very successful project, and we have a nice looking front lobby, a safe entrance to J-Pod, and the entrance to J-Pod has both the safety aspect there and the winter aspect of crossing in the wintertime. We've always had 2 or 3 workman's comp cases where somebody slips and falls. We should be eliminating those this year. And every time we do a project, we try to enhance workman's comp issues and things like that.
It looked beautiful coming in, just the feeling.
Very nice, and once you walk through that doorway, you know you're very safe once you're past that, because, I mean, everything is ballistic rating 7 in there. It's about the highest ballistic rating you can get, and we're still doing a couple of finishes on our mag locks, which should be done probably by this Friday, hopefully, and we'll be instituting after 8 o'clock in the morning, locking that front lobby down so that nobody will enter without being buzzed in first. And I don't know if you noticed in the front lobby, we put a green vestibule lobby in, so there's a Leeds green lobby, so about 85% of the dirt stays up within 20 feet of that, coming through that vestibule. So it'll help with the cleaning in the building, the dust, air spores and things like that. We're going to be taking a tour a little later, so we can, any questions, we can talk about some then, or does anybody have questions right now?
Any questions right now, or? I'm sure there'll be some that pop up on the tour. But.
All right, sounds great.
Thank you.
Jay?
On budget?
Actually, slightly under.
Let's see. New business plowing RFP for MVU and Highgate.
And central office, I should say.
And
Sorry about
central
that.
office.
Yes, so currently, Swanton is engaged in a 2-year plowing, or it was a 3-year, there's 2 years left of a plowing contract. The other school districts had engaged in 1-year contracts, or they have expired, and so I spoke with the facility directors about possibly going out to bid in one merged, at least for a 2-year contract. So that would include Highgate, MVU, and central office. I believe there's consensus that that's a good idea, and so I'd like permission to launch an RFP and award to the lowest bidder, if possible, over the next probably 20 days, 20 to 25 days. If that's something the board's agreeable on. I've been working with the facility directors to gather what they need for specifications, because some are very specific as to access to different areas that they need, salting and sanding times, those kinds of things, snow removal. So facility directors are involved in that process as well.
And this will go out as either a package or each individual.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes. So that was what was decided, is that vendors, to allow for the most competition and the most amount of bids, that they could bid on any or all of the schools.
Any questions?
You said it'd be for 2 years, so then I'm assuming that to coincide with when Swanton's expires. Okay.
Just have to
Right.
say the farmer came out on me when I first read that, because I couldn't understand what ground we need to be plowing, but then I realized they were probably talking about snow removal there.
Next it would be seeding.
I said we really should go no-till, but
Snow plows next time.
Removal, I should say. That's funny.
So, hearing no other questions, I'd entertain a motion to allow them to go out to, or allow plowing to go out for an RFP
An award to the lowest bidder.
and award to the lowest bidder.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Discussion?
how will those bids go out? Do you have people that you're already planning to send the bids to, or will it be advertised, or how
Oh,
does
it
that
will be
work?
advertised, but I also send out, I have a pretty good list over the last 8 or so years of people who have shown any interest at all. It's a pretty competitive market, so I'm hoping we can get some good bids. It will be a little bit difficult to evaluate those bids, so I'm gonna design the bid spec form so that they can bid on any or all, because that's where it will get a little confusing.
So that is where it's important to have a good spec sheet, because when you say lowest bid, sometimes you may not you want to make sure they can handle everything that you,
service.
the service that you want.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Chris? Yeah, building on that, have we always said lowest bid?
We haven't.
Because I think back to being on the Swan School Board, where we had a bid that was for plowing and it looked low, but then there was a bid for the total snow removal in case the storm exceeded our parking lot capacity.
Yeah.
So I'm a little,
In this case, the bid specs are gonna be written so specifically that I think we will be able to award to the lowest bid because they need to be that specific. I understand what you're saying, and no, we don't always award. Typically, it would be the board's discretion, and I'm happy to bring them back to you if that's what you choose. But my plan was to write the bid specs. I mean, I guess I can't show them to you right now, but from the facility directors, it's the specs on what they need are very as specific as clearing a certain door by a certain time with a certain kind of equipment, snow removal upon request. So it would basically leave it open that anytime we need it removed, the facility director would call and have it removed.
Have you ever gotten bids from outside the district,
Outside of,
our district?
yeah, right now, I technically consider the one that's taking care of Swanton is now out of district. They used to own CCR, which is no longer in business in Swanton. I'm
I
hoping.
guess I kind of like to see it be a local business versus some outfit from Chittenden County.
Sure. So if price is not the only thing that you want to consider, then I'm happy to bring them back to you. You're meeting every 2 weeks, which allows me much more flexibility. So if there's other things you want to consider, I'm happy to bring them back and let it be a.
One thing we've done,
Those
and
kinds of
you
things.
may already do this on the Franklin Select Board, because we had run into issues, was that in the RFP, we put that, in this case, the school board or the school district would have the ability to reject any and all bids.
We always include that.
Okay.
Yeah, that language. Yeah, just as a protective.
Yeah.
so I guess the bottom line for me is, do we want it to come back to the board? Or do we just want to empower the administration to solicit bids, go by the low bid guidance and take it from there?
What's the board's pleasure on that one? Eric sounds like he would like it to come back here, right? If I'm understanding that correctly. So,
I think it would be good practice for us to know exactly who it is that we're looking at.
And things like, you are perfect within your authority, by all means, to look at things like local and take that into account. So there's nothing, but that's not something I can write into an RFP, so, yep, it'd be a good conversation to have. I'm happy to bring it back.
I would actually agree with Eric. I'd like to see it at least come back for review. I'm not trying to micromanage you,
No.
but I would like to see it come back.
Absolutely.
Do we need to amend that motion
We would.
to strike and award it to the lowest bidder?
Yes.
I'll make the motion to amend it.
Nice thing about that, if they're unhappy bidders, we can always blame it on the school board.
That's right.
There
That's
you
right.
go.
The school love that.
Do we have a second for the amendment?
I'll second it.
So first thing we have to do is vote on the amendment. Or discussion on the amendment first. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of amending the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. So the new amended motion is to allow central office to seek RFPs for MVU, Highgate, and central office for plowing.
Are we still using the verbiage lowest bidder?
That's what we just amended out.
We did take it out.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we need anything in there that shall be bringing it back? Or is that just sort of a...
If I don't have the authority to award, then I have to bring it back.
Okay.
So I think I don't.
And then we can decide if we want to go with low bid.
Right.
Got it.
So those all in favor of the newly amended motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Let's see, we're on to Highgate Tech Lease.
Okay, very similar to the MVU Tech Lease. Unfortunately, the timing just didn't work out with the merger this year to get everybody on the same cycle or at the same time. But Highgate also engages in a Chromebook lease every year to maintain their student devices. They have just purchased 55 Chromebooks that were budgeted for from Top Floor for a total of $11,776. So I would like to have permission to solicit lease rates for them as well. And that one I would ask that I can award to the lowest bidder because they will be providing me exactly the same terms. It would be a 3-year lease with an annual payment.
So I'd entertain a motion to allow business manager to, you kind of lost me, I'll be honest. What am I?
Oh, sorry. To allow me to solicit lease rates for
Okay.
the Highgate Chromebooks and award to the lowest bidder.
There you go.
So moved.
Sorry if I'm talking.
I'll make that motion.
Well, I think, Pete,
Oh,
you want to
Pete
second it?
did.
Sure.
Sorry. You just fit me in wherever.
Sure. Discussion.
You said they're already using
Was that
Chromebooks?
Peter or Eric that made that?
Yes, this is like a
I
replacement.
think it was
cycle.
Peter.
It was
Yeah.
Peter.
Okay.
Pretty much what all the schools do now. I would like to get them all in the same cycle. And I don't even know if the leasing rates have fluctuated quite a bit over the last couple of years, so I'd like to look at something else there. But,
Is 3 years gonna make it so you're not gonna do the same cycle though? 3 years is kind of.
most schools have multiple leases. So they might have 2 or 3 leases going at a time and we're rotating through. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, which is what I'd like to.
Yeah.
Get away from. Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. And last for new business, student activity account signers.
Okay. So if you remember, one of the first business items that I asked you to consider was the operating account for the general fund when we established the MVSD board. We also have student activity accounts and we also have hot lunch accounts. There isn't statute that's as clear on those types of accounts as there is on your general fund account that is taxpayer funded. So I've checked with our auditors and I also received a great resource this year at our tri-state conference that I went to that came from a different auditing firm on student activities, and they do allow the signatory authority to be that of the principal on the student activities accounts and the hot lunch accounts, rather than the treasurer or deputy or assistant treasurer on the general fund. So I guess I was looking for approval or a formal motion from you acknowledging that that is who would be the signer on the student activities accounts. Student activity accounts have, we follow all the same procedures, we have all the same backup, they get audited the same way, but oftentimes they're very timely transactions for things like fundraisers, activities, all different clubs and organizations and things like that. And so you can't always wait for a board meeting or a board review. In talking to one of the finance committee members, kind of in casual conversation, I would like the board to review those, even though it's not, all the payments, even though it's not required at the end of every month, just for information and transparency. I would like them, the board, the finance committee, to do that. And then gain some insight and give recommendations or questions and concerns at that time.
Does each of our schools have an activity account?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So you really need to have somebody building-based.
It needs to be, yeah.
Yeah, it's logistically, it's just really important for principals to have that authority to be able to make sure that the materials are there for the club or the purchase for the field trips, etc.
Do you need a motion?
Yes.
Is that how it worked in the past?
It is how it worked in the past. There's new GASB laws around the management of student activities funds. So while the statute hasn't caught up necessarily, the management of those funds needs to be tidied. Not that we weren't always following the same rules and we always required the same backup, but administratively, and so for instance, we haven't used the same financial management software to track these expenses. We were using the old software. It needs to be in the new software. We need to have the same checks and balances in place. People that are opening bills or requesting payments can't be the same person that's also writing a check. So we've been really good about that, but I want to make it a much more formal formal process, but still allow the schools to be able to do what they need to do and the principals to be able to do what they need to do, not interfere with the operation of those activities. And
So, this won't be something new for the principals?
no.
Okay.
The only one that it might be new for is MVU, and MVU, because of the volume of activity that we have here, because of all the different activities, I would like to ask that you also consider that being the MVU principal or a designee, which I would think would be Anne Marie, who's the accounts payable person in our office now, and she's worked for MVU for years. If that's something the administration is comfortable with, just because of the volume for a high school student activity account.
Only if you send her back.
Send her back, not having her back, sorry.
Jay?
Would that be the fund that you would use for all student fundraisers throughout the new unified district?
They each are allowed to have their own checking account and their own fund, so we're tracking them all separately right now.
All right, so will this new fund be a way to use, that you could track them all? Or are you just gonna let them?
We're tracking them all but separately with their own fund numbers. Yeah, so MVU's student activities won't be in the same checking account as Franklin, and we're actually allowed to do that with hot lunch as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to, motion to have the principals be the activity account signers with the exception of MVU to add a designee.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Chris, just a question. Dina's here. Was that something that Justina would be doing at the Swanton School? Or would you normally do it?
I usually do it
Okay.
with our business manager, actually. He manages that, and
Okay.
we communicate. But Justina and I communicate too, so it's more of a partnership. Probably will do something.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of allowing the principals to be the activity signers and a designee at MVU, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you.
On to old business. We're gonna start with warrants.
I think Eric has them.
I'm good.
These are warrants for the month of August. Sorry, I thought. Would you like to read it?
Sure. Actually, how about we have the finance committee do it?
Sure. Okay, total accounts payable, 1,987,108.21. Payroll checks totaling 35,586.75. Payroll other disbursements, 919,087.36 cents. Payroll deductions, 631,524.05, leaving a total 3,573,306.37.
So I'll entertain a motion to accept check warrants as read.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting warrants as read, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 9-0. Let's see, we're on to the Highgate project update.
Do you want to start?
Sure. We actually had a meeting with Scott Martin. Paul was there, Julie and Laura and myself. And we were discussing moving forward with the bond in Highgate. Originally, we had talked about moving on to hiring a construction management firm to manage everything. Through some investigation by Laura, she has found, and Scott has also found a lot of other issues that we hadn't noticed. So the chances of us being able to do all the work needed under the amount of our bond is becoming unlikely. So Laura pursued some alternative ways of paying for the repairs needed to the school. and she's found a process called performance contracting. I'm actually gonna defer to you on this one because I'm gonna butcher it if I try to explain it. It's basically a very large company that's willing to come in and work with us to find efficiencies, and they use the efficiencies gained, i.e. saving money on electricity, improving boiler efficiencies, insulation, which improves heating, heat loss, cooling, all that kind of stuff. Anything that creates efficiency, lighting, anything that creates efficiency, they keep the efficiency. They use and they guarantee it. So if they come in and say that they can put in, replace all of our lights and save us money, they guarantee that amount of money. And if they're wrong, they pay for it. If I'm misspeaking here.
Basically, you're financing your additional projects, with the savings that you're seeing from your energy efficiencies. And these large corporations, such as Johnson Controls, EEI, and Siemens seem to be the big ones. They basically will guarantee in a performance contract agreement that will be satisfied, or they will continue to work to gain more efficiencies.
So obviously we're not going to make a decision on whether to do this tonight. What we need to decide is, do we want to pursue this? Or is this something that we're just not willing to look into? And the reason why I say that is because if we decide to look into this, we would like to do the bond a little differently in Highgate. Instead of hiring a construction management firm, maybe what we do is we move forward and just do the parking lot, because that's in desperate need in Highgate. And then utilize this performance contracting to possibly fix and pay for some of these other issues that we have within the school, and then kind of see how it all shakes out and see how we can best utilize the money in our bond to fix the school, plus use this performance contracting to fund some of the other issues within the school.
How much short do we anticipate will be?
That's not.
No idea at this point. And I have no idea how much they would be willing to give us. The point of this is, do we want to pursue it and look into it and get this information so we can make a better decision?
I think for me, if I can jump in, because this is new for me as well, what we're looking to do, because we have multiple years to do a bond project, is to start with something we can manage ourselves, something very visible, that's something that was at the top of the list for the voters, the parking lot. And then if a company such as this could work with Highgate on, they would look and see which of the projects that we had as part of the bond that would actually be something that they could help us with, leverage anything that's high efficiency, anything that has to do with ductwork, insulation, lighting, maybe windows, I'm not sure, but any of those projects that they could lever into savings that we could pour back into the building improvements. So doors or those kinds of things. So because we have multiple years and this is a new avenue to look at, we really want to see, would it work for Highgate or not? Rather than you steamroll ahead with the bond and then you say, oh my goodness, we could have saved $500,000 to do something else had we known, had we looked at it differently. That's really basic understanding. Obviously, before the board makes any kind of decision, we've got a lot of legwork to do. Obviously, these companies are bid out just like contract managers. So what we want to do, instead of rushing with a contract management request for proposal, we thought start with the parking lot because of the urgency there. That's something we don't need a manager for. And then that gives us a little window to look at the possibilities and see if Highgate is a high leverage site for these savings that would help with investments in other, when you open up a wall, you never know what you're going to see. When you open it, those kinds of things that I think is the fear with that. Am I misrepresenting?
No. I really see it. Sorry, Don, go ahead.
No.
There's usually a couple of reasons people do this. One of them is they certainly want the most green building or energy efficient place they can. The other one is they desperately need money. Are you in both of those situations or just?
I would say we're in both. I mean, the inefficiencies in the, we have windows that were from the 60s. So, I mean, the efficiency there, I can't imagine there's any. I know Scott mentioned there's a lot of efficiencies could be gained within the boilers. Actually, Scott and Paul discussed it. They thought Highgate was a prime candidate for finding these efficiencies and it would be an attractive offering for these companies.
Are you now, I know you did a lot of preliminary work, probably worked with an architect, passed the bond. Are you now finding there are things that need to be done that you didn't cover in the bond?
Scott is starting to uncover stuff, yes.
Okay.
Well, and just like any other bond process, I think, where you're trying to balance what taxpayers can fund and what's on the list. So Highgate did have a facility condition assessment performed,
Right.
and it was fairly comprehensive, mechanical, electrical, site, I mean, the whole shebang. But then you have to take that assessment and say, well, what can we afford? And so that's a perfectly normal part of the process. And so there were a lot of things that are taken off the list at that point. So really what I'm gathering from other business managers I've seen that have done this performance contracting and talking to the state and talking to these reps, also leasing company that would fund it, is that it's really sort of like an opportunity to extend a project. So rather than, like Julie said, ramming something through, rushing to get, yes, we can probably fund most of the things on our list, but we might fall short if our contingency isn't there. If we slow down a little bit and look at this other option, we might be able to get another chunk of projects done at the same time, have no further debt payment, have a greener building. It's kind of a win-win situation, but I don't have enough information right now to do that. I'm still researching. This is very new. It's something I found out about at Tri-State recently, and the reps asked if they could come and give me a presentation, and they did, to myself and the facility directors. I would really like to recommend that we have them come and talk to you and explain to you what this process is, or even to a smaller finance committee. If what they're telling me checks out, which I've talked to 2 highly regarded business managers already. I've talked to Cassandra Ryan at the state, and I've talked to the leasing company that they deal with over the last 15 years, and it's a process that works in the state of Vermont, and people are using it. It's Milton, Rutland, what's the new one? Slate Valley. Yes, Slate Valley Unified Union School District. So it's happening. I want to feel more comfortable, and I want to bring more information to the board.
I wouldn't be doing it.
I asked Chris, I don't know a lot about your building, but I have used it. And I think I was Johnson Controls quite a while ago. I think it's a very good process, but I didn't know what kind of study you've done to date. And it appears you did one, but now your new person is finding some stuff. So I think we really need to explore it thoroughly. If you had told me or told the board that you'd had engineers there and you'd had architects there and they wrote a real thorough report, you took all of that and you put it in your bond and the voters approved it, then you might be wasting your time. But if that's not what happened, then it's a good option.
I wouldn't say that's not what happened. We did do a facility assessment. We had Reggiano, Tyler Mumley came in and did it, but we didn't take every single thing they told us to put in there. I mean, it was $3 million, and we didn't think that would pass, so we cut
And this
to
was
get
the
it down
second,
to something we thought would pass.
this was the second bond attempt, so Highgate had a failed bond attempt that
So you may
previously-
not get so much money that you can do everything you want to do, but my limited experience, and as I say, it's been a few years, was in Chittenden County when I was project manager there. It was worthwhile. I don't know the other companies, I've never worked with them, but I have worked with Johnson Controls.
And like I said earlier, I just found out about this a week ago, so I'm still trying to process. She's given me some homework to read through, and I started reading through that, but I don't know enough about it. I'm just trying to decide whether we want to investigate further. Yeah. I'm not ready to make a decision to go this route. I feel more comfortable maybe slowing down a little bit with the bond, move forward with the obvious thing we need to fix. We also have a leaking white building roof that we should fix this coming summer. The parking lot is just beyond atrocious. But those are easy things. Scott can manage those. So maybe we can get those done and then look into this. And then if we decide not to go with it, we still have the bond money. We can still move forward as planned before.
So what do you need from the board? I mean, do you
Just,
need permission?
Not really. I
Not
guess I
really.
just wanted you to know if it was something you
Direction.
wanted to consider.
Okay.
Make sure that, we didn't pursue this and everybody was dead set against it.
Eventually, if it is something you want to pursue, we would launch an RFQ, which is a little bit different than an RFP. It's a request for qualified bidders. And that opens up sort of an all-encompassing project where you're hiring this organization to manage your entire project from start to finish. So you wouldn't have a construction manager and an engineer and a contractor. I would like to recommend that if you would like me to consider this, they would come in and do an assessment that doesn't cost any money, sort of a very superficial kind of assessment to see, does this make sense for them to waste their time on either? That could be any of those companies that could come in and do that. And then find out if it is something that can cash flow. Are there enough efficiencies in Highgate that they think they can find so that it will cash flow, so we're not wasting everybody's time? And if that is the case, then I would come back to you. Or they would come and do a presentation. They've also offered to do that.
Of course, I think we should have a motion supporting the business manager, business office, whoever committee is, to pursue this and bring information back to the board.
All right.
Peter keeps waving his pen.
I'm just curious. I'm not familiar with the efficiencies in the project, but how does it work? Do we ever get the benefit from those efficiencies? Or
There is a runoff period. They want to collect their money back.
Right.
They're willing to fund the project, and they will go for the heavy hitters. Obviously, they want to get the money back the quickest.
Yeah.
And their run out dates are like 10 to 18 years, right? Yeah. So it is a long run out. They're gonna get their money back, and so the benefit to us is we don't have to borrow money to pay for this. The downfall is we don't get the efficiencies ourselves for up to 18, 20 years.
So it is something to think about whether it's worth doing it, because if they're doing it, they're getting.
Oh yeah, they're making their money. I mean,
So
no doubt.
we gotta balance it.
They're doing it nationally.
But you would be borrowing the money to finance it anyway.
And paying interest.
Well, right. And so with a
Depends how much
performance
savings they get.
Yeah, this one's gonna come down to the numbers.
Yeah.
which is why I would prefer that we have one of these companies come in and talk to you and show you what they've done and where. It's, I can try. I think I understand the concept, but the idea is you typically would bond, and we are bonding, and we have bonded for $2.3 million. We can't go back to bond for a while, clearly, because that's not how this works. So is there a way to extend the project, improve the building, improve learning environment without getting a debt payment that we have to go back and ask taxpayers for that's above and beyond what the potential savings can be? Absolutely, I hear what you're saying. I'm just looking, Highgate is one of those situations where maybe they haven't had the opportunity to make the improvements that a lot of other buildings have had the opportunity to make. I think that's probably a fair. So the potential for efficiencies there is much higher than it is in some of our other buildings.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to allow the business office to pursue performance contracting further.
How would you like me to do that? Gather the information and bring it back? Would you like to hear from them directly?
Well, you'd said that you would seek them, have them take a look at the building, see if it's something they're even
If you
interested
want
in
me
doing. I think that's the best way, because if they don't even want to touch it, then this
the only
is
way.
a
Yeah.
viewpoint.
It's the only way.
Okay.
Jay?
Do you, I don't know the answer to this question, but do you have the authority to do that without the authority of voting on something like that? Because you're committing the school to a long-term arrangement, a long-term financial arrangement.
It's a tax exempt lease is how it's paid for. And there's a non-appropriations clause. So basically they would only invest in things that if we did not have an approved budget, they could remove from the building if they had to. That's never happened, but that's how the law is.
Oh, Nola?
is this like the solar project on the frontage road where we asked, we picked a percentage amount and then any savings went back to the solar company?
No,
Oh,
that's a consortium, works a little differently. Yeah.
okay.
Again, I don't want to try to represent a pretty complex
No, I just heard-
concept on my own here tonight. I'd rather that we have them come and do that. Basically, say they could save you 20% on your electric bill. They're gonna guarantee you that that 20% is gonna cover your lease payment, plus maybe a service contract, plus you might see some additional savings. And they're gonna put in your agreement that we guarantee you those savings, and if you don't actually realize them, we will pay for it.
Okay, so back to I never got a first or second on the motion.
I'll move the motion.
I'll second.
And I think it's important, why I said earlier that we make a motion is that for transparency for the voters, and if we go down this road, it's like, well, how did they get there? Well, we got there because we asked the business office and others to gather information. We may well want somebody to come, but I think the next step is information. I mean, that's a process we used before when I was involved with it. And, if your building is old and hasn't been kept up the last decade, there are probably some pretty substantial savings there.
I did add just a four slide PowerPoint that I had shared with you. I did put in the shared drive if someone wants to hear how they describe it. It's a very general performance contract, but it gives you some key points.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of pursuing performance contracting and to be reported back to us, the board, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Let's see, we're on to lease for Robin Hood Drive, which is central office.
So what I would recommend is I would look for a finding that this negotiating a lease agreement is something that is qualifies for executive session. So I would look for a finding to move that to executive session when we do go into that. When we get to that part of the meeting.
So do you need the motion for the finding right now?
Yes, a motion for a finding and then a motion to go into executive
There we
session
go.
later.
So right now, we're doing a motion for the finding for a reason to go into executive session.
I'd be afraid to even try that one.
The motion is, just so people know,
I'll make that motion.
it's to have the item in the public section of the agenda, and then you have a motion and possible discussion about the appropriateness of the topic going to executive session.
Which the reason for going is contract negotiation.
The negotiation of a lease,
Negotiation of a lease.
real estate
I made
lease.
that motion.
Okay. A second,
I'll second that.
discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the finding to go to executive session of negotiation of a lease, signify by saying aye.
During that section of the agenda,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. And we will revisit that when we get to that part of our agenda. Okay, school choice policy and procedure discussion.
So what we had talked about doing, I'm just gonna, 1, 2, 3.
I've got my
Sorry, I can't count past 8 o'clock at night again. Here we go. And there's just one for each board member. What I put together, and I did put it in our, in the school board drive, is are samples of school district policies that have policies about transfer for elementary schools. And I made a little table because I was a special educator once, so I made little tables. And I thought about, because there's this huge variety. of schools that have, boards that have made a decision that we don't want any transfer except in emergencies, to we want wide open transfer as long as there are class size examinations and so forth. And so I really wanted to give you a gamut so that you could look at those. I have my own opinions about school choice, and I know the principals all have opinions about them, and you all will likely have opinions too. So I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to look at these and get a sense of what's out there. This is work that we're going to bring to the administrative team to look at, to address their questions and concerns and help draft something that this board will look at to consider. But I want to have some kind of sense from you all. I don't want to spend time with this busy administrative team working out a more widespread elementary choice. I'll give an example. Many of them have open choice they all have a timeline, just because you need to plan for your next school year, of when you apply. And people, it's shared how many slots are available in each school at each grade level. They even, one of these was specific enough to even have a couple of placeholders for kids who move in so that you don't stack a third grade class right up to the limits. But a process like that with a timeline, and then anybody is able to apply within that timeline. And then, of course, there are procedures around emergencies and things like that. Some of the policies referenced siblings, whether they got priority or not. Some of them did not reference that. Some of them referenced when families move within district. Do they have to apply? Do they have a right to just stay? Is transportation provided? Is it not provided? All of those questions. So, hey, there you go. There's a lot for us to chew on. This is not something that I know that the board is committed. I started with a negative. I know the board is committed to doing this in a thoughtful and timely manner. So it is one of the topics that we're going to start discussing at our very first administrative meeting with principals, and bring things back to the board for your review.
So are you looking for just a general idea of what we're thinking to make sure you guys are kind of, so we're all on the same page as you go into that
Right.
first
Well, you haven't.
conversation?
I don't know that you've even formulated those ideas as a group yet.
Right. So
Yeah, we had a pretty
Yeah.
robust discussion in a short period of time at our last meeting, and we were all over the map then, so there's a lot to digest. And now that, to me, now that there's a boilerplate to kind of compare to, I think a lot further discussion would be better next meeting, but done.
I'm wondering on something that's probably as complex as this, and something's gonna take time. That maybe we put together an ad hoc committee with each elementary school having either the principal or principal's designee, work with 3 board members, or 2 or 3, as an ad hoc committee to start moving this along and bring back some recommendations to the full board. I can see this going on for months, if maybe years, if we sit around here, 9 of us, trying to take and work through this. So, and the other thing is, in fairness to the building administrators, if they take a couple of months, and then they give us something and we don't like it, so I just think that a group of people having a charge to do something over the next couple of months to keep the board informed, knowing the board is gonna have the final say, is gonna be a better process to get where we wanna go than just bringing it back here and plowing through it. Snow plow, dirt plow, and plow.
No till.
So that's something I wanna put on the table.
Eric?
I guess I'd like to know just how much our hands are tied at this point. I mean, I guess with the language in the law and the statute, I don't know how much we can pick and choose what we can and can't do. I know there's policies out there that exist, but, you know, if push comes to shove and, you know, there's an overwhelming transfer of students from one school to another, and it doesn't jive with what's existing with the merger laws, I don't know how, would the board be accountable for that? Would we be on the hook? I mean,
Well, the board gets to set the enrollment areas for their schools. So I looked at Burlington's. It's not in here because it's not quite the same, but it is I wanted to look at some single districts that have multiple elementary schools that have nothing to do with Act 46. So those kinds of policies have existed forever. You can say if you live in this neighborhood, you go to this neighborhood school. And then people apply to go to the magnet schools, the way they have that set up. So what I saw was the gamut. There were school boards that determined that you go to the school where your residency is, unless there's an emergency and the superintendent says it's okay. And they give some examples of what's an emergency. That was the most restrictive, where it was clear that the policy of the board was to stick with their town school boundaries for the elementary. That was one, and that's not what you discussed during your whole Act 46 process and your AGS process. It's not, you know, what my,
well, and that's
you
not
know,
what the
assumption
intent of
is
the
about the
law
belief
either,
of this board.
you know.
Then the others are, you know, there's some that were, you know, with numbers. I think the ones that were the most responsive had parameters, but they didn't set particular numbers. They said that they will be set based on what the enrollment looks like that winter, right? So if this elementary school has, you know, 15 students in third grade and this other elementary school has 29 kids in their third grade classroom, you know, you would treat the choice for transfer of those two different scenarios a little differently. And you would make that public and then people would apply. Some places have wait lists, some places don't have wait lists. So there is a lot to wade through. But you know, I'm making a little bit of an assumption that this board will not be the exclusive restrictive side of that. But I wanted you to see that those are the kinds of directions you can go in. I don't necessarily agree with it, but you can go in that direction. There, I just clouded
I
my.
think that is some criteria, though, that you could be pretty, if the administrative team was working on it, whether it's an ad hoc committee or what.
Yeah.
That, I thought pretty much everybody was inclusive. Am I wrong about that? Is there anyone who doesn't want that inclusive?
I think that's the question that we have to answer as a board. Are we, the second one, are we open to transfer for elementary? If we're not, there's no sense in
Right.
even starting I think there is, but that's the question we have to answer.
It was when we were doing our
I agree.
committee and
Yes.
submitting our AGS, it was discussed frequently and there was very strong support for it. So
And-
either we believed it or we were just trying to.
And we included it in our articles of agreement that
Yes,
would have
Right.
limited
Well-
school choice.
Let's answer the question with a straw poll.
Yeah.
All in favor of just opening up to transfer in the elementary schools, show by hands. There you go.
That
So
gives us
we're,
an easy direction then.
yeah, we're all in favor of looking into this for sure. We're not against
I
school
think the one
transfer.
place we do differ would be transportation. I think that's going to be more contentious than anything. You know, are the parents responsible, or are we responsible since we're one district to do it?
Just quickly, I haven't seen any that say transportation is in place, except there's one where they already have a route,
That's what I
right? So,
saw.
you know, I think,
They also say unless a bus is available at Maple
Right.
Run, which,
you
So
know,
when we get to that point further down the line, we
Yeah.
could call in the busing company and say, are there routes where you're going to be able to, without extra burden, pick up
Right.
students or?
because it is a socio.
Or is there a place where you can
Yeah.
pick them up if the parents drop off?
Centralized.
Yeah.
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 yeah, there was one that even referenced parents are responsible, but it's okay if they drop off at the nearest school bus stop.
Unless an existing bus route is
Yeah.
available.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a creative solution for some, because it can be an equity issue, absolutely. And transportation is not an entitlement, and it's a very expensive service. So we're trying to do this in a way that's respectful for
Yeah.
families and choice without it being a burden.
That's good. So what do you think is the best way forward, Julie?
Well, I don't know what interest there is in an ad hoc committee. I will certainly start the conversation with our administrative team, but if there is interest in doing a small committee as well, we can talk about that.
I think it does make sense. I mean, you're right, bringing something like this to a 9-member board, it's too many cooks in the kitchen.
It could be your administrative team wants to meet by themselves and then meet with a portion of us when they're ready to bring it to the board, and then, that group, as opposed to having us stick it in with your administrative team to begin with. If I were them, I'd want to have my own time first before I had the board members involved.
Yeah, I think their input's gonna be kind of pretty critical.
So step one, them, step two, maybe a couple people from the board.
How about at the next meeting, we discuss, because I will have met with the team, and then we can see how, what the interest is in having a smaller committee.
Great.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure you had this in your hands. I had it on the drive, but I know sometimes people like paper.
Some people can't handle their emails and lock them out. Okay, let's see, we're on to VSBA dues payment discussion.
Something easy.
Now, this is the discussion tonight, right?
Huh?
This is discussion,
It could be
Yeah.
action. I probably should have put action there.
Possible action.
Yeah.
Any comments, questions, concerns?
I'd like to know the amount we're talking. What amount of money we're talking?
12,000, our dues are 12,000.
12,000.
600.
12,600? I have one question that, as they were presenting, it kept popping in my head is, we don't pay dues to VSBA, then what?
I believe that, well, one, you wouldn't have a representative on the regional or the board. So you wouldn't have a vote in terms of their board. In terms of things like conferences or trainings, when there is a cost, I believe they have a non-member cost. So if it's $100 for a member, nothing but $100. But if it's $100, maybe it's $2. I don't know. But they have separate rates. Many of the things they describe are things that are on their website so it's not as if they're gonna turn the website off.
They will, if no one pays their dues, they will if they're.
This is true. I'm trying to be.
Turning off the lights.
This is a very important discussion for the board members to have, because this is your organization.
Don?
I would ask that we not take action tonight. It wasn't warned for action. I would ask we have a discussion, whatever people want. But I'd also ask people as much as possible to go to the Enosburg meeting, because one of the hottest things that's being discussed right now is the health insurance. And I thought the question was very good of the ladies. As a board member of the regional board, I represent Franklin County. I do not see it that it's VSBA driving the train anymore, it's NEA. But they pick the people to drive the train. So I think that that's a big issue right now. Act 46 was a big issue, probably still is in some of our minds. But I think if you go to Enosburg and you get a sense that VSBA has no value of in this whole health discussion, healthcare premiums for employees, whatever you want to call it, then that may just solidify you don't want to join. But I think to vote on it tonight, regardless of the discussion, doesn't give you a chance to see how VSBA can or cannot help on an issue that probably has a very significant impact on our budgets. If healthcare keeps going up the way healthcare keeps going up, and employee contributions are staying at employee contributions, then I think it's going to make it really tough for school boards to get budgets passed. So that's my soapbox.
Sorry, it goes along with what you were saying, is what, do they help during negotiations?
Yes,
With the board?
they do.
They
Yes,
do,
they
they've been a big
Yeah.
help for people that have been on that committee? The committees?
If you ask for information, they can get you a lot of information on prior settlements. You could probably get that yourself if you want to call 30 school districts and analyze it, but they usually synthesize it.
I wasn't part of those processes, that's why I
Yeah,
wondered
but no.
if they were helpful.
Did they also have the trainings, the special trainings too, the SBA for negotiations? They did have special trainings.
Eric.
Yeah, so I guess my only experience with utilizing the VSBA was through a hiring process was for superintendent. And that we did not use them, we used Bob Stevens, who was an outside counsel, and we paid him, is that correct?
No, he's through them.
Yeah, he was through
worked for them
VSBA.
on that.
But it's a fee for, those kinds of services are a fee.
Right. Yeah, so that's, to me, if we're paying a fee on top of dues, that, to me, that doesn't make any sense either. But not only that, but I'd like to explore other options, because as far as I know, there's another organization, and I'm not very familiar with it at all. It's the Vermont Alliance of School Boards or something of this nature, and they're very similar to the VSBA, and I'd like to hear from them actually in a similar presentation, so that we can make a good, responsible decision as to, you know, is there something else out there that can help us and we can utilize?
I'm
I think we
I'm
should.
not against
I think
it.
we should invite.
I would like to reach out and see if they'd be willing to come and talk with us. Because it's much easier to make a decision when you have more information. So.
Yeah, I'm not ready to make a decision.
The school boards that, or the districts that are not renewing their memberships are joining this organization and paying dues to them. Now, I'm not sure if there's a membership or if they just contributed what their membership was from the VSBA to this organization. But I guess I'd like to know more about it. I mean,
I think it'd be
everything's
interesting also
hearsay.
to know those schools that are no longer paying their dues and they're moving to a different organization, where they fall on the Act 46 thing, because I will come back to it. I think that's what this never would have come up if Act 46 hadn't been what it is. So I would be curious to know, are any of their members, were they pro Act 46? Or is everybody who's on there because they're angry with VSBA's stance, taking a stance on it? But their website is, is very telling. But that's their website. I can't, their membership may not reflect. I don't know. I would be interested to know.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Megan, and I think Act 46 definitely looms over this. I think that's what brought it to this board. But I don't think it's entirely just the stance that they took on Act 46 and the delays. I think part of it is also the process. They do post their meeting videos online. The one from March is a very lengthy discussion about actually the testimony and the position that they took on the delay. There was a lot of discussion. I think actually, Dawn, you were the one that offered an amendment to remove the phrase "we oppose delay."
Yes.
And there was a lot of discussion on that.
And I don't know if it showed the vote tally, but I think I lost by 1 vote.
And yeah, part of that process, I know the part that caught me, it's process piece, not the end result so much, was one person offered the justification for leaving those words in there as, quote, "We have to leave it, otherwise we leave Nicole hanging," in reference to their president who had made a statement opposing a delay. And so it's that question of, do we have a board that's there advocating for its members or primarily for themselves and their staff? And that's the concern I was left with after watching that video. So I would encourage everybody to watch that, because this is not easy. It does feel like there's only one option in the state for these resources, which is what makes this particularly difficult. But take a look at that video. It's a couple hours long. I know it's a tough one, but
Which site is it on?
It's on the VSBA.
Or the
it's on the
VSBA?
VSBA site. I have the link I could send to Julie to distribute.
David Kelly is the executive director of the Alliance School Board.
Going back to Megan's comment, I think
March something.
March.
March 14th.
That was the testimony. They're meeting on March 3rd or something.
going back to Megan's comment, I think Megan is right on in many ways, Act 46. And I have to be careful because some of the stuff that I have in my head was executive session. But we got quite a bit of pushback when our executive director did a press conference with Governor Scott saying that we really needed to, now these are my words, but squeeze the Vermont NEA as far as a percentage of teacher employee contributions, because it's more than just teachers. And as a former legislator, when I heard that, I was like, whoa, where'd this come from? And then found out that I guess the ex-executive committee, on very, very short notice supposedly, approved it. But it, in my mind, and I've stated this in the meeting to Nicole, VSBA lost a lot of integrity in the legislature when they got caught between the association, union, and the governor. To me, an amateur in lobbying would have seen that coming, like a big old steam engine coming down the track and would have sidestepped it. But unfortunately, our executive director jumped on the tracks, I think, to stop, to hold the train back. I don't know. Anyway, that led to another very challenging meeting. And I think then followed by a group, because there were people who came out and said, this is not right, and VSBA should not be doing this. And if they do, how did they poll the members? That started the ball rolling. But then the whole Act 46 with the vice chair, with the support apparently of the executive committee, did that testimony. And that's took up a good share of 2 board meetings and some votes and debates. And now we are moving forward with a new executive director at some point. There may be no connection on the dots at all, but those are a couple of issues that really got the membership fired up.
The meeting is October 7th in Unitarian Falls.
So what I'm hearing is you'd like us to put on a future agenda a presentation from the Vermont Alliance of School Boards, and hopefully people will attend the October 7th meeting in Enosburg, and then we can come back to this issue with some more information and more sides.
Is there any other group other than the Alliance? Like one that maybe is more
Central?
Yeah. I don't know if
No,
there is.
I don't
but
think
I
so.
haven't heard of any.
I just think it would be nice to hear from them.
The October 7th meetings at the high school.
That's in Enosburg, I believe it's at the high school.
We'll get a notice pretty soon, I'll send it out.
You should get an email on it.
Okay, so no need for motion because we need more discussion. So we are done with old business And we're on to other business,
We're getting there.
which is superintendent updates.
So you have my newsletter. In the interest of time, what I'd like to do is throw open to the central office administrators. I've tried to have them come to the first meeting of the month. We're gonna sort of rotate who does presentations, MVU will be doing some, and then central, you'll get a curriculum, SBAC presentation or some other presentation. At the next one, we'll rotate
Can you
that.
bring that schedule up?
I can do that.
We did modify the schedule that we originally put out, that the schools were going to rotate when we were at MVU. We're with administrators' input and trying to figure out where to fit central office in. We found it was easier to lump central office with MVU.
So,
And
yeah.
then the second meeting of the month where we visit a school, obviously when we visit that school, they'll be the ones to do a bigger presentation. And then we would still hear from the other two elementary schools.
A couple of changes that were made here. We had, and this is the one that just has the date and place of the meetings. We flip-flopped the informational meeting from Highgate to MVU, and then because Highgate was getting one last presentation, one last opportunity to present to the board, so we didn't like that at all. So we did that, and everything is so small, pardon me. And then we went around and around with the when written reports will be due, because either you would have 2 written reports within 2 weeks back to back, or somebody was not being heard from. And it was very difficult to rotate because we're rotating the elementary sites. However, in discussing with the administrators, and you have Joyce's report because I told her that she would be giving it at the first meeting, so that's an anomaly. What will happen in the future is MVU and central office will have written reports. The central office reports will be in my newsletter, as they always are, and MVU will have their administrative report. That will be at the top meeting of the month. In the second meeting of the month, you'll have written reports from elementary schools, and one of those will also be presenting. So it was, everybody had an equal opportunity. It was much cleaner, so we went ahead and did that. And there will be, again, the month of March, we'll have 2 elementary school presentations there because that's just how to make it even. So we wanted to make sure, and again, we will likely have some things that happen, like something comes up in a school, and so we get something to you at a different meeting. I can't imagine, but it's, these things are not necessarily set in stone, although principals like them to be set in stone so they can plan for it because they're planners, as we all are. But we wanted to make sure that everybody was heard from and that the administrators are present at meetings and they're dividing up the meetings so that their voice can be heard. We do want to work on this seating arrangement so that we have more seats at the table because I hate having, they actually, some of them, I think, like sitting in the back. But but I think that it's too much of a peanut gallery kind of thing. And we'd really rather have people at the table, at least those that are presenting. That's why we made room for Jay and Jen to come up. So anytime. So if it's all right with you, I'd like to throw out and put Kosha on the spot so she could give sort of an update of what her contribution to the newsletter is, and then I'll do the same with Wendy and Tanya. I think that's it.
Sure. So I'll just start out by saying we had an administrators retreat on August 12th and 13th. We spent one day really doing some vision building, and Julie led us through the process of identifying our values and really building a vision based on those values, which would then guide all the work of the district. On the second day, we did have Learning Sciences International come back and do a training with our administrators on deepening the understanding of the supervision and evaluation model that we adopted last year and built some more expertise around that. And we continue providing some coaching so that they have more support in implementing the new model. On August 14th, we had a new teacher orientation. This year we changed it a little bit. So we had all the teachers come for one day, and it was like a district-led orientation. We really talked to them about what our philosophy is in the district, what do we really stand for. Tanya did some talk about what do we mean by all students, what is our multi-tiered systems of support. We had Don Collins came in and welcomed these new teachers, and they were really happy with that. Jeff Binet talked to them a little bit about diversity in our district and what that means. We had Amy Irish from NCSS really come in and talk to them about classroom management, student behavior, and just like an overview of the kinds of things that they might expect. Then we had our district in-service. Most schools had 4 days of intensive in-service for all our teachers. One day was led by the district. Jen talked a little bit about having Dr. Eric Twardell come to our district, and he is from Stevenson High School, which is one of the Blue Award ribbon schools in the country, and he did a really inspiring keynote. We heard from a lot of people that they appreciated his message about how critical it is to combine social emotional learning with content and not treat it as something separate. And that's the foundation for our students before we can get to the content. And then, as she said, he also worked directly with the MVU staff. In addition to that, we had Swanton really led the science PD this year. We had consultants from the Vermont Energy Education Program working with Swanton staff on unpacking the NGSS. And being able to experience science instruction from a student's point of view. And then they also did some planning with the teachers to help them plan out their units for this year. Highgate and Franklin staff have signed on to a collaboration with the Stern Center this year to really build our early literacy foundational skills. That's where we really want to put some effort in so that we can get as many kids reading at grade level by grade 3, because the research is showing us how critical those early years are. And so that was a kickoff with the Stern Center. They're going to continue coming every month and working with teachers from Highgate and Franklin this year. So we're really excited about that collaboration. And then the Unified Arts and Guidance folks all met with their own teams in the district. They always appreciate that time together to look at their standards, to look at the curriculum, and talk about what's happening in terms of a district. They are also talking a little bit about vision for themselves and where they want the students to be able to go. And then finally, para-educators from Swanton and Highgate met in Swanton and had some training with NCSS. And the focus of that was using relationships as an intervention. So we had a lot of really good PD happening with support from all our administrators, teachers, and of course the school board. So that's just a quick overview of what we did.
Thank you.
Wendy?
So for the early childhood program, we've had a lot going on since our last update. We had a licensing visit in Highgate to license our new classroom, so that was successful. And on the very same day, I followed the licensor up the road to Franklin and had a chance to look at the new beautiful playground that the community has from a licensing perspective and what it means for our youngest students who will be accessing that. And that was also a very successful visit as well. In addition to participating in the district level in-service offerings at the district level as well as each school-based level, the early childhood program staff, including special educators, speech pathologists, classroom teachers, and paraeducators, came together. You see some pictures here of some of our time together doing a protocol from the School Reform Initiative called It Takes a Village. We had an opportunity to identify our own values and beliefs and talk about what is it going to take so that everyone knows that this is what we value and believe in our program. So we're starting that work and aligning it with the district level initiative looking at values and beliefs. After that in service, we have additional requirements for training every year because we fall under the Agency of Human Services, Department for Children and Families, Child Development Division, licensing regulations. And so because of that, we have an opportunity that allows us to collaborate with the Maple Run School District. There's been a nice long time partnership between the two where we had some days together. Our staff were able to participate in professional development. We talk a lot about multi-tiered systems of support for students. We were able to start talking about tier 1 strategies for working together as adults. So what are some best practices around professional teaming? We had the opportunity to do some work around trauma and resiliency and some opportunities to revisit some of our other practices around handled with care and supporting students in some of their biggest moments of need. Most excitingly, I'm kind of tired tonight because today was orientation day. And all of our classrooms are full, and today I get to go to all of the schools and greet children and families, and we're just so excited to have the classrooms open and ready, and to see all of the littlest ones coming in with their backpacks. Very successful, so we're talking about 150 students across our district. We run a morning and an afternoon session. So in our 5 classrooms across the district, 15 students in each classroom. That doesn't include the students that receive home services or services in their childcare settings. But it was a really exciting day. And to feel the energy of the staff, of the school-based staff welcoming our youngest students, everyone was just so exciting. So today was orientation day. It was a good day.
Thank you.
So I guess to sort of preface the work that I've been doing recently, I think Kosha mentioned a little bit about literacy, and we talked about SEL, and there are multiple different sort of initiatives that we continue to work on. And so I think during that orientation day, with the new teachers, what we really got a chance to do is kind of model for our new teachers that we are doing this together, right? So we're really trying to break down those silos around gen ed and special ed and early ed and whatever ed. We're all of us in education together. And so I think we're working really hard to do that, though we each have our expertise and we are teaming on all of these things. So we kind of modeled that. And then, so to build on that in the lens of special education, we're really focusing this year on using really good data, and we're using our special ed coach to support our special educators and our teams to use data, track data, be able to make really good decisions for kids and identify where do we need to grow and where do we need to increase our expertise. So Stern Center is working, like Kosha said, K-3 with gen ed teachers and special educators on that what's first best. We're also continuing to push our special educators even higher than that to get training either Stern Center or elsewhere to be able to meet the needs of our most struggling leaders. So we're kind of working together at various levels. Additionally, around the social emotional learning, we're teaming to figure out how do we start laying out standards around that. And within special education, one of the areas that I'm particularly interested in working with our teams this year is around those executive functions for children, and really supporting them, particularly students that are working with or needing the support of additional adults in our buildings, and to be really careful and cognizant about when we say we need additional support from a paraeducator, from a teacher, from an interventionist, how do we automatically start to build their independence and their ability to not need that, right? So we're working really, we'll work really tightly as a special ed leadership team this year, and to work with our special educators to come up with those systems to really make sure we're building that independent self-efficacy for students, especially those children with some of the most needs, so that we're not over-supporting and we're never getting away from that. So that's one area of focus for this year.
Now, Robert, you didn't have a report in here because you were in the middle of the State Longitudinal Data System Fund, but I didn't know if you had any other.
Well, it has been fun, and I'll quickly report with Dina 6 inches away from me here that we stole from her school, Rusty Gregory, to work on data with me, and that's essentially been his job since he started August 3rd or 4th. And we are up to speed now, submitted our data. That was about 90% of my job from last year, same with longitudinal data. So I think we're moving in the right direction, and I hope to very soon be able to share what that looks like for the end users, boards and administrators.
Thank you. We are on to the tour, unless we want to save that till after. There's really not much anything left. The only thing left is executive session.
Correct.
We should announce the meeting dates. Future meeting, our next meeting is September 17th at 6:30 at the Highgate Elementary School Library. Anything else, or? Okay, we would be on to the tour, or we going to executive session? Huh?
Tour first.
I like the tour.
I like it too. Get us up moving on.
Is anybody going to stay in this room, or is everybody going to just think about what to bring?